Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Taylor Hall's Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Torian Ellis, and today's theme is Let's Talk About Student Politics. But before we get into the meat of the matter, let's first introduce our panelists. So we have Mr. Roger Bent, Mr. Javon Neal, and Ms. Christina Williams among the panelists. So Mr. Roger Bent is a Student Services and Development Manager of the Leslie Robinson Hall of Residence. Similar to many of the presenters we have had thus far, Mr. Bent is an alumnus of the UWI, Mona, where he completed a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Media and Communication, as well as a Master's in Higher Education Management. Apart from his involvement in debating and public speaking, Mr. Bent has also served in student government. He was the president of the Guild of Students of the UWI Mona campus in the early 2000s. As Student Services and Development Manager, he oversees and mentors many student leaders. Additionally, he has served in the past as a returning officer for the Guild elections, which would also give him the experience of student politics from that perspective. Mr. Javon Neal currently grew up in the volatile community of Kentire in Papillion, St. Andrew, and from as early as primary school, he was encouraged to take part in co-curricular activities and also maintain good grades. He went on to follow this path, and while attending university, he continued to participate in a wide range of co-curricular activities, giving greater attention to those which allowed for him to interact with people and give service to the extended university community. He therefore contested positions on the Guild Council, where he served for 3 consecutive years as Games Committee Chairman, Vice President Services and Special Projects, and Guild President. Though very involved, he also achieved his academic goal to obtaining a bachelor's degree in literatures in English. Mr. Neal currently serves as a manager of the Guild of Students at the UWI Mona campus. In this role, he provides administrative oversight to the student government. He's extremely passionate about his job and the impact that it has on youth development, and tries to find new ways to engage with student leaders that aid in their development. Additionally, we have Christina Williams, who is a graduate of the University of the West Indies, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in international relations and a double minor in social policy and development and public policy and management, along with a language emphasis in Mandarin. Before being elected as a current Guild President of the UWI Mona Guild for the 2019-2020 academic year, she had spent over 10 years of her life as an ardent advocate and serial humanitarian, extending service to her fellow youth service, ensuring access to quality education, health services, and capacity building in areas of employability and leadership. The impact of her work has helped her to gain notable positions and commendations, such as Governor General's Achievement Award when she was 17 years old, and later became an advocacy and policy specialist assigned to the Commonwealth Youth Council that represents 1.2 billion youth. Moreover, her successful profile earned her additional opportunities, such as social impact consultant with UNESCO as a youth ambassador and as a UNFPA youth advisor. She believes that success is for those who seizes it, and that we can all arise and be great. So having heard all those accolades of our panelists, we can identify that they have all been involved in leadership. And so let's begin with the question. So what influenced you to venture into student politics, and how has it developed you holistically? And anyone can start.
Repeat the question, please, Torian.
Yes, so it's what influenced you to venture into student politics, and how has it developed you holistically?
All right, I'll guess ladies before gentlemen. All right, I'll go ahead to start. What influenced me? I think well, to be honest with you, different things at different times, to be honest. And I think that's something that the student leaders of NO have to consider as well. During my time when I was running for Guild President, and I'm sure when Mr. Bent and Mr. Neal talk about their experiences, they will state the same, that they were I mean, there probably were different challenges at the time or different manifestation of the challenges. My primary concern in 2019 was deregistration. I was personally affected by it, and I wanted to ensure that other students, well, I could have helped in ensuring that other students would not be affected going forward. So that was my primary, I would say, the primary factor that would have influenced me to run for the guild at that particular time. My holistic development, well, definitely teamwork makes the dream work. Mr. Neil probably laughing right now because he will probably remember that when I joined the guild, I was a bit of a loner, to be honest. And then being on the guild, I learned firsthand that I have to work with the team. I have to learn team dynamics, and it was through teamwork that I was able to excel as guild president. You know, no matter, you'll never be the brightest person in the room. You don't want to be the brightest person in the room, and you also want to be able to rely on the strengths of your team and the vulnerability of the team as a whole to make that whatever goal you have be fulfilled. So learn to put my ego aside and work for the team's goal. And that was, I would say, personal development for me, as well as learning how to balance time management. Of course, you heard Mr. Neil's his bio that while he was very much involved, he also accomplished his academic goal. It's very important because we have had stories of student leaders who, for whatever reason, would have had to stay back a year or two or even 3 because they weren't able to balance. So that was something I had to learn as well. And I would say finally, learn how to be a great negotiator. I think I left guild president having had a track record of how I was able to successfully negotiate different policies for students. So I think those 3 things I would state for now. Thank you, Tori.
Mr. Benz or Mr. Neil?
I could know. Thank you, Tori. What prompted me to venture into student leadership at UWI was the challenge I had as a commuting student in participating in sports. I thought at the time that the sports portfolios were badly organized and there was not an effort being made by the university administration to sufficiently infuse sport into the curriculum of the average UWI student. So what would have happened, for example, then that sports day was a 2-day affair and it happened on Thursdays between that free period there, that sub period. So that is when sports day used to be 2 Thursdays at the club period. So you'd compete in the heats in 1 week, but you couldn't compete in the finals because you'd have exams or classes. And that annoyed me. And so I started to have discussions with at the time, director of sports, Ms. Grace Jackson, and the deputy principal, Mr. Joseph Ferrer, to ask them how we could better accommodate student athletes in the university and to see where we would be going. And I guess it was a blessing at the time that Professor Gordon Shirley came into principalship, and he was a sports-oriented person. And we started to have those discussions, and that prompted me to run for Guild GCC at the time. And coming out of those discussions, we now have a full day of sports day and no classes or exams during that time based on that lobby effort. So it was things like that that prompted me to venture into student leadership and stay in student leadership, because almost every year that I ran, there was something that I saw that we could have done better. And so we started to improve upon those things in those portfolios to improve student livelihood on campus. Holistically, how I developed from that, why that significantly helped with the humanistic side of my development. Tragically, one of my family members died when I got onto the guild in 2008. And whilst I was drowning in sorrow and in grief and mourning, the thing that kept me from going into depression is the fact that I recognized that there were students who were worse off than I was, even though they were not going through the same kind of tragedy. And so throughout the years that I served in student leadership, the help that I was able to give to other people during the course of that time, and also the friendships or the networks that I was able to build through my interactions with fellow guild counselors and students, were significantly a part of my personal and professional development, and that carries me through today.
As it relates to my sojourn into student leadership, it was an interesting start. My journey started in Chancellor Hall as EAC of Chancellor Hall. And I became an EAC at Chancellor Hall because I wasn't good at anything else. I wasn't good at sports. And, you know, the man thought I should try leadership because I can talk enough and I have an authority presence about me. So they say, you know what? You should run for EAC for the hall. I started to run for EAC for the hall, and I did creditably enough job that the man said, you know, hey, what do you think about the guild? No, I wasn't interested in the guild at the time. I was here as a 24-year-old student thinking I'll just go back to St. Elizabeth as quickly as I possibly could. And then I got so much feedback from persons who saw the work I was doing in Chancellor and encouraged me to join the guild. So I joined the guild not with any feeling that I was going to create change, not with any expectation that I could do anything. I just joined the guild because I knew EAC work. I was good with people, and I had a knack for outreach. The real understanding of what student leadership meant was when I got onto the executive of the guild and I saw the level of advocacy and the sheer responsibility that student leaders had and the impact that we could have made. You know, that was when I realized that there was a place for me to advocate. I could use my voice effectively. I could actually relate to people in the way that I've been relating to in a larger scale, that I had the ability to articulate issues for people that they themselves didn't want to articulate, or they themselves were fearful to articulate. And that was where I started to find a voice, right? To one, understand people, two, to figure out how to make people feel valuable, because I learned on the guild that because you are now visible, people expected you to call them, people expected you to know them, people expected you to be in at their functions. That was a whole getting to know life and getting to add a new component, because I was just being a student before that. Those kinds of experiences led me into now getting to know people and getting to know people issues. So by the time I got into EAC and I moved into VP, I was now fully cognizant of the fact that people wanted accountability, because the perception of the guild, as much as it was doing good work, wasn't so much about accountability. It was more a popularity contest. I didn't want to be a popular person. I wanted to be a substantive person. And so I started to campaign on some of those substantive issues. And that led me, after having a post in VP that was uncontested, it led me into going for guild president. Again, I thought long and hard about it, because having been on the guild for 2 years now, I realized it was not an easy road. But there was just so much on my heart, because I felt that the position of presidency would have allowed me to create some change that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do as VP. There was unfinished work that I felt that I could have added value to. Those were the things that motivated me. How did I develop as a consequence? If I did not get involved in Guild, I don't know where Roger Bent would have been in 2022. It directed me in so many ways. My understanding of the university, the people I would have met would have molded me, would have informed me of things that I needed to do and how I needed to do them. The friends across the region, maybe even the world that I would have met, and the level, most importantly, a confidence in myself and in my abilities that nothing else would have been prepared, that could have prepared me for that. I've walked away from Guild presidency relieved after 1 year, had no more interest in running for the position, but learned so much having been serving people. And I realized that service is really at the heart of leadership. We never get it, because for so many of us, we choose leadership for others to serve us. But we've never gotten it right to realize that leadership is about serving others. That has stayed with me forever. It has stayed with me through church. It has stayed with me through friendship. It has stayed with me in the job I now do. I'm service oriented. It's what I do. It's what I get greatest pleasure from doing, and what I will continue to do till I die.
Okay, thank you. So apart from, advocating for others and serving the student body during your tenure, what were some of the benefits or the benefits you have seen now since, being involved in leadership positions?
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, so I was asking, apart from, advocating and, serving the student body during your tenure, what are some of the benefits that you have obtained while being a student leader? It's a general question.
Okay. Could someone else answer so I get a sense of what is being asked? I'm not too sure yet.
I mean, I have developed, as I said, personally, in terms of my sense of discipline, time management. My personality traits have been honed through my involvement in student leadership. My emotional intelligence significantly developed through my involvement in student leadership. Those are what I'd call my benefits of being involved in leadership. People management, time management, human resource management. It's just different things that would have come to you over time.
Mr. Neil, you're a bit low.
Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah, go again. Yeah.
I'm saying, so for me, it says emotional intelligence, time management, people management.
Still a bit low.
Hello? Boy, I don't know how to fix this now. Yeah,
Let me allow somebody else to go while I try to sort.
I don't know if you want to jump on until it starts out the device.
Okay, so the question is about what benefit did I get from it?
Yes, from being a leader.
Personal benefit. Personal benefit. Hello? So what personal benefit did I get from being a student leader?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I would have mentioned before a sense of self, a confidence that leadership would have allowed me to develop. I didn't have much exposure before coming to Kingston, right? I grew up for the most part in St. Elizabeth, gone to school in St. Elizabeth, was a church fellow in St. Elizabeth. That's just the name. If you notice, I mentioned St. Elizabeth a lot. I was in St. Elizabeth a lot, right? With the same group of people a lot. The exposure at UWI and the persons I've met and the experiences that were imprinted on me gave me a sense of self, helped to make me interrogate my identity issues and to embrace a new thinking and a new identity. So that was one of the most beneficial things for me. I also realized that I'm a people person. I didn't know that, right? I knew I talked a lot, but I didn't realize I'm a people person. And that helped me as in understanding my own personal power, as well as my effect or impact on people and how and the kind of responsibility I carry because I may have that kind of sway, right? So so I got a whole lot of personal clarity out of it. I got a sense of how to manage me. Also got a sense of how to manage people. When you get to the level of guild president, I've always said to people that the guild president's mandate is not really to carry out a portfolio. The guild president's chief mandate is to manage the guild, to ensure its efficiency. So a leader who is obsessed on getting out a mandate as a guild president may very well fail because you would have ignored the people on the guild that really needs your time, needs your motivation, your effort, and your drive. You really, at the heart of it, is a people manager. That taught me a whole lot of skill sets that has segued after guild life. That was when I knew I wanted to do student services as a career.
Christine, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yes, it is food for thought indeed what Mr. Bent just said in regards to the guild president being a people manager. What I will add to that though is I think you can play a dual role where one, you're a people manager or you're a team manager. You're the wind beneath the wings of your team. But I think due to how I would say the culture now of student leadership and the issues that have manifested in regards to education, that a guild president also or may need, not necessarily have to be, because it depends on the team that you have, but you may need to have a 1 and 2 core mandates or core policies. And so as a student development specialist, or some person say I'm a specialist, or student development practitioner, separate to being a student leader, because I am still a student leader. When I train teams or I train local councils, guilds, etc., I say to them that decide on between 1 to 3 core policies or programs that you want to implement. And the president would become the watchdog of those policies. So even though the VP, in this regard at the guild level, the VPSS for the VPPS or the EAC, etc., may be the one to implement, or maybe a joint partnership between different members of the guild, I think that the guild president should be the watchdog. And that is why I think that my guild, big up anybody listening right now who's from the 2019-20 guild, right? Legacy team, I'm proud to say that. I think the reason why that guild council was able to be so impactful was because we agree that one would be one of the core mandates for the guild. Yes, it came from the president's office, but it became a mandate of the guild, right? And we were able to reduce that by 99.9% that year. We also talked about the health card policy. We were able to revise the policy after 70 years rather, of it being there and persons not being able to access aside from the UWI Health Center. And of course, on certain emergency situations, you could access it at the UWI hospital. We were able to revise that policy. I think that was able to be achieved because I said before, we focused on that as a team, with my office being the watchdog. So I think you have to play a dual role. To answer the question that you asked in regards to how did I benefit from it, I did give some answers earlier, but I will just add as well that whether we like to admit it or not, people become president because they also want to leave a legacy. And I don't think there's any, let me say this for the persons who are probably listening or probably running for president right now or running for any other office on the guild. There's nothing wrong in running for an office and saying, when I leave office, I want to be remembered. In fact, I think if you don't join office with that in mind, you won't be remembered. I mean, come on now, look at Mr. Neil. Mr. Neil has been the manager for the guild for years. Mr. Benta, former president, is SSDM at the time for one of the newest halls, right? And I'm sure because of their service did contribute, their service as presidents, because it was so memorable, because it was so impactful. The UWI administration was able to say, listen, these young men, well, probably not so young men anymore, forgive me, these gentlemen were able to contribute so much when they were students, and they have now transitioned to a professional role, and they still want to contribute to students. So there's nothing wrong with leaving a legacy. There's nothing wrong with coming on board and saying, listen, a part of my goal here is I want to contribute to students. I want to impact their lives in a positive manner, but I also want, when I leave office, somebody can say, yeah, man, Christina did go on with her thing and she did a good job and she was a great president. There's nothing wrong with that.
I hope everyone is taking note that leaving a legacy is important. But just a follow-up question, Christina, how have you balanced being a student leader and your academics? I recall from your bio that you did double major or double minor and a major. So how did you balance?
All right. So let me start off by saying that balance does not mean 50-50. It never means 50-50. Balance is a change in equilibrium, and you change it based on what's happening. So for example, in the summer before I took office, well, rather when I took office what? June, right? And between that time, between June and when school started in September, I was only guild president. I didn't focus on no schoolwork. Why? It was summer, right? No school not keep, right? I didn't have summer school. So I just focused on getting my team trained, capacity building for everybody, having our retreats, getting all the plans in place, starting to have meetings. And before I even before September came around, I was already having meetings with different stakeholders, getting my name and face out there, ensuring that I created key partnerships that would make my tenure easier, right? So there's nothing wrong with just focusing on being a guild counselor, depending on the time frame that you're working with. However, when school started now, and mid-semester started come around, I was a final year student. So, me, I think about my GP and all of that and trying to graduate. Then I just shift focus a bit. I said, okay, I did all the work I needed to do beforehand. So I have a little bit more space or a lot more space in my calendar. So I'm able to now say, okay, then 70-30. So 70 schoolwork, 30 to guild president, or 62 schoolwork, 40 to guild president. But I think, well, not I think, but for sure, you have to, the balancing act is something that you're constantly changing based on the environment. When we had emergency issues, I had to drop most things, that's the truth, and say, listen, I have to focus on this because the students need me. Then as soon as that is resolved, I switch back to being student or student more. So once again, it's a balancing act, but balance doesn't mean 50-50, it means change in equilibrium.
All right, so what do you think separates a good leader from that of a poor one? Anyone can chime in here.
I think it's the heart of the leader. The heart that's the first thing. It's the heart of the leader that will determine whether the leader is a good or a bad leader. And then two, the vision of the leader. The heart will give clarity to the vision. And I think those are the things that really differentiate. Some people will join leadership because of what they can get out of it, or because they have a propensity for adulation and so many other different things. Others will do it because they want to serve people and they see the difference they can make, could make, and they have a particular goal to achieve that they feel could benefit a larger body than themselves, right? Those things I believe are distinguishing features. The other additives are just what they are, but I think at the heart of it, it's the heart and the vision.
I truly agree. I'm not sure if Mr. Neil's audio is working now, but
Try.
But this question is directed to you. As the current guild manager, what are the common mistakes that you have observed or seen, like student leaders rather?
So many. Commando, they don't adequately understand their roles and responsibilities before coming into the portfolio. Sometimes they have a misconception about the kind of authority that they have and or how the portfolio functions. So somebody may run for a portfolio, for argument's sake, let me say vice president or even EAC, thinking that they're going to have $10 million to spend and they're going to be able to traverse the entire island to execute projects and do street feeding and school feeding. And then when they come into the portfolio and recognize that the budget is limited and the things that they want to do is not really things that they're allowed to do based on the restrictions of the Constitution and so on, then they get disheartened. Sometimes a lot of them are self-interested and they come with the intention of taking rather than giving. And so when they recognize that it's not so much about the taking but the giving, they also lose interest very soon in the portfolio and they just stop working. Sometimes some of them are poor at time management, and so they succeed in their execution of their guild responsibilities, but they fail in school. And that for me was a major issue, which is why the guild would have sought to set that 2.5 GPA requirement, because I guess commonsensical thinking is that if the university requires you to have a 2.0 GPA to graduate and you come in at 2.5, let's say you start to invest into your portfolio and you your grades fall or you fail a course or two, you are still able to graduate. But if you come in under 2 or at 2 and then that happens, then you can't graduate. Sometimes people coming and they become wayward because again, the kind of authority that they think they have. So they think that they have access to this great deal of resources, the money, the power, the fame that comes with being a guild counselor. And they get sucked into that facade. And because of that, they start to make ethical mistakes. So people start to try to take money, try to siphon it off, try to find creative means to do these things, and then it catches up on them. And these mistakes have lifetime impact.
All right, and how do you approach this, that when they come into the portfolio and they look with a different ideology and what is expected, how do you approach this situation, get them on the right track so, you know, they can properly execute and service?
Well, one of the things I do is that I try to attend every guild retreat. And in attending the guild retreat and staying with the guild counselors, spending time with them, I try to know them personally and understand the way that they think before they even start working in their portfolios in a real way. So that way I try to understand their thinking and then get to know them and guide them intimately. So for example, Christina referred to me earlier and said that I'm probably laughing when she's talking because Christina was alone. Christina didn't have friends. Christina never wanted friends on the guild. And that for me was a problem. And so Christina and I spent many hours just sitting and conversing about the need to work with a team, the importance of the team, and the lifetime network that she would develop while serving on the guild and coming out of the guild. You know, so those are the kinds of strategies that I employ in trying to, and where I see that they don't understand their portfolios, I'll have sit down with them and I work it through with them so they come to that kind of understanding.
All right, and Mr. Bent, during the debates, are there any weak points that you observe from student leaders, especially given the one that has gone since week?
I think I'm seeing a whole lot of reactionary vision rather than proactive visioning, and that is, I think, sad. I'm expecting a maturing of students because of just how much knowledge they have, of just how much exposure they have, that I think the thinking and the maturity level of leaders now should be greater than my time or even eons before my time, right? I don't get that, right? Young people are far bolder, are far more innovative, are far more creative. They are achieving so much more at a younger rate than any other generation before their time. Yet still, I'm not seeing the kind of leadership maturity emerging out of it. And I said it at the debates. The guild has to see itself as a body that is more than just 9 months. It has to begin to articulate a clear vision for itself, and it needs to have some strategic imperatives, right? The guild should be working in 5-year frames, not 1-year frames, not 9 months frames. That is why it's so hard for them to see true achievement, because as soon as one, it takes a while to get off the ground. The summer is a dead period. And by the time you get into the semester, you added sports and hall and all other activities to that, plus mid-semesters, then end of term semesters, end of term exams. There's so very little to get done, right? So you have a whole lot of wonderful plans, never get done, pushed aside, shoved aside, and a new person come in with a whole new set of plan, and the same cycle continues. When will the guild get the sense to realize that you have to buy into bigger aims and bigger objectives? Maybe they need to contemplate their own strategic plan, or they need to find derivatives of the UWI own strategic plan and move towards it. But that's when they're going to see incremental and at some point significant achievements, because until then, it's going to be largely problematic. It's too sporadic. It's too personality based. It has to change.
So apart from, these manifestos or these points that they present be too personality based, what would you suggest for them to like avoid so that whatever they're putting forward on the table can be long-term rather than just serving the 6th term, so that, other students coming in after they have gone can also benefit?
Well, first you have to do a lot more research. I didn't think that very few persons I felt would have done research. And a lot of them, like typical politicians, are on the sensational points. They're going to touch what they feel people want. But at some point, a good politician need to balance wants versus need. Because need is going to be what changes the culture. It's going to be what will remain. I'm not saying want is not important, but I am saying need is the core issue, and that is more likely to be sustaining than the kind of way we tend to pander to wants of students in the moment.
In general, why do you think that, when they make manifesto points at the end of the tenure it's not executed? Is it that they are not feasible?
No, listen, when you are proposing stuff, and one of the things I've learned when I was Guild president, I felt when I was Guild vice president, I sat in for the Guild president at a number of areas, right? So I felt when I became president, I knew the work. When I got into Guild presidency, the seat was different. The expectation was different. Everything. I was actually new to the job, and I felt I would have done far greater work because I knew it so well. In other words, you may plan, but when life happens, you have to change. Now, when life happens and you change, articulate, explain to people, go back to the drawing board, relate to people, let them know why. People will understand. They're not hard, right? But they want you to explain to them. They want communication to say, this was my plan. X happened and I've pivoted. This is what we have to achieve at the end. Ain't nothing wrong with having 5 objectives and you just achieve 2, but give validity to why those 2 and not why the 5. You may also have done other innovations that you did not list. So you have something to show for it.
Yeah. All right, Christina, what was it like being a woman and the Guild, and were there issues, and how did you overcome them?
I expected this question. Let me start off by saying, Mr. Neil, just for clarification, so like I didn't want friends on the Guild, it was just a matter of I came from a space before where there was a demarcation between personal relationships and professional. So it was me kind of transitioning. I needed to transition from that kind of environment into a Guild environment where it was a lot more about, as you say, friendships and teamwork and stuff like that. So just to be clear, in regards to answering your question, Tori, it was interesting because I came in already from a race where I had gone up against 2 male colleagues. And, it was that kind of fervor already in the atmosphere about woman versus man, etc. But for me, once I'd won the post, I was more focused on, as an individual, I was here representing all. And so male issues are male students' issues and female/women's student issues, they all mattered to me. And even though there were a number of female leaders on the Guild, the male leadership actually outranked the female leadership in terms of numbers on my Guild at the time. And so I had to ensure that when I talked about capacity building and empowerment of my members and having them feel that they were deserving and their voices mattered in this space. When I said deserving and their voices mattered in the space, I'm referring to that when we're at a Guild meeting and somebody made a suggestion, I would be like, well, is a man that from Chancellor, so I'm not gonna listen to what I say, right? Or whatever. Or because they never support me in the election and they support the opponent, I'm not gonna listen. No, we were all on the Guild, we were all deserving. we all run our different races. Yeah, you've never supported me, but that's fine. It's democracy. I respect that you supported whoever you supported, because all of us were running. All of us wanted the opportunity to serve. It wasn't about me, the individual. It just happened that I won because of votes. So all voices mattered regardless of gender, and that was the first thing. And what also mattered on the guild for me was that vulnerable communities mattered. So it didn't matter, it wasn't just about gender only. There were also other considerations that were made as well on my guild. And I said, listen, everybody's voice here mattered. And whether hall, commute or not, who have backative, who not backative, you all mattered. What I tried to do though, because gender representation do matter, right, at the same time, is ensure that in regards to safety and security issues, we had matters of sexual harassment, women's rights generally, that attention was paid to that. And there were different departments, or rather different guild portfolios, like the VP SSP portfolio to Gabriella Morris at the time, Senator Morris at the time, and we ensured that those were focused on. If you recall, well, probably you won't recall, Tori, you know, you're kind of young, but it was under my tenure that we had the missing student. And what I had to ensure that entire situation was very unfortunate, but I had to take it up underhand as best as possible to help manage that. And when we had the whole matter about getting funding, well, when we raised capital publicly to ensure that we had money we could put out there for Crime Stop, that came from my office, right? Working with the police, so we're going to raise funds, and then Corporate Jamaica came on board and raised funds. We wish that never happened at all, but that's one example of how we had to really prioritize. When we did, we had a partnership at the time with the Jamaica Constabulary Force, to the point where we actually had community meetings in Augustown and surrounding communities, because we want to ensure that not just women, but all students were protected. And we talked about, you know, women feeling safe and students overall feeling safe, walking on the road back and forth. And we had a number of robberies, and we literally had to talk to the community leaders. Listen, I needed to appeal to the men in your communities to protect the students. So while there were certain nuances or gender specific priorities that we looked at, we also ensure that across the board, women and men, their priorities were met. Because I am the president of all, I was the president of all. It wasn't about women's rights only, but of course, we had a gender specific manner in which we approach some of the issues.
All right, thank you, Christina. Just want to indicate that persons in the chat, you can send a question to the panelists. All right, and what would you say are some of the wrong reasons that students run for politics? I know that before or earlier, the panelist was mentioning that, you know, there's nothing wrong with entering, you know, to leave a mark or leave an impact, but what are some of the wrong reasons that you see candidates running for elections? Neil?
A number of candidates would run because they are self-serving, as I said before. People, for example, have come to my office and asked in nomination period, how much does the guild president get towards their tuition? And it is on that basis that they would want to run for guild president. There are some people who believe that they have their tuition, who get their tuition paid, or there are other benefits to be derived by being a part of the guild council. And that is the basis on which they seek to run for office, not to give representation to students, not to advocate, not to be a student servant, but to live lavishly. And so we have to correct those misperceptions and move forward. And that is the primary one, actually. That is the primary one. The other reasons are some people want access, so they get access to guild resources, and resources are not just funds, but also people. So people want to be in the know, want to be a part of the administrative crowd, want to seek favors. So somebody may believe that if they get to the guild, they won't need to go to classes, they won't need to sit exams, they won't need to pass exams, because they would ride on the fact that they are a guild counselor. So get leeways as it concerns those things.
Because I have to go soon, Tori, I'm just going to add my final thoughts here. Want to answer this particular question, but I'm also just to leave some final thoughts for consideration for anyone listening. So I would say to ensure that there's a balance between your desire for personal development and your desire or what should be your first mandate to benefit the lives of students. And I say balance it out because there's life after the guild. And I know Mr. Neil is going to give this line before he leaves, but may I teep it just before he does. There is life after the guild. And what we have seen in the past, that there are a number of persons who serve on the guild for years. And then you have someone who only serve one. But for whatever time that you may serve on the guild, you'll have to leave the guild eventually, right? And you will have to face real life. And you want to ensure that for all this time that you've given your service, you should not be leaving the guild the same way that you came. So if you came to the guild and you couldn't string a coherent sentence together, right? By the time you leave, you should be able to put together a little sentence. Yeah, because why? You had to talk to people to get the vote, convince them. You would have had to go on debates and speak, and you'd have to advocate in meetings, etc. At whatever level, even if you weren't the guild president, almost every person on the guild have to go to some kind of meeting because most persons are on some kind of subcommittee or something at university level or faculty level, etc. So that's an example, right? You don't leave the guild the way that you came. And even if you are making connections of personal gain, and you're not doing it in an ethical manner, you can make connections in the sense that you network. Your network is your network. And if you're going to be, imagine you being a guild president and you've done all these wonderful things and after you leave, you can't get a job. That kind of speaks to, it does speak to how well you're able to leverage your office. When I say leverage, I don't mean the sense of, you're going to put aside the student's interest because you're pushing your interest and your interest to get a job after guild presidency. No, it's a matter of you were out there, you were working, people saw your work. Even when you don't know people are watching, they have watched you, they have seen how well you performed, how respectful, diplomatic in certain cases, effective you were, you negotiated, you advocated, you did your job. People will see that, and in ways that you never imagined, you will be commended and opportunities will open for you. And Mr. Neil and Mr. Bent are prime examples of that, right? I have had my own share of opportunities post guild presidency, and in some very indirect ways. I've had people who have approached me to work on policies and programs in a professional manner. And they said, Christina, you can handle this particular role because when you're a guild president, you're the one who championed this policy or you champion this program. And I'm like, how do you even know about this particular thing? So there are very much ways in which you can leverage your office directly and indirectly without being unethical about it. But as I said before, you need to balance your personal development with the mandate that you have, your first mandate, which is to advance the lives of students. And what I will say as my final word, because I said I have to go have a meeting, is that the guild belongs to the people. It always has, and it always will be. And as students first, we need to embrace that concept. For many years, we have given the guild to people that we know deep down they don't deserve. It's a deserving quotation. They don't deserve it because we know they're coming in not to work, but to earn for themselves, primarily. Or they won't be the most effective, but because of popularity contests or whatever, or because they jump on a bandwagon, and bandwagon varies now. Don't think bandwagon is the only obvious ways. There are different kinds of bandwagon. We just say, we'll go for this person because, right? And I think we have to take back the guild for the people, or at least maintain the guild for the people. And it starts with us first as students, putting your vote where it counts and putting your vote in a way that it really matters, in the sense that you vote for people that you know truly will work and can work. To the persons who are running for guild now, what I will say to you, apart from the obvious, is that you need the student leader that we need right now is a different kind of leader. I say to people all the time, I could be president now, and I wouldn't want to be president now. I'm very happy I was president 2019-20. I wouldn't want to be Danielle Mullins, and I don't want to be either Kiefer or Omalara, who are on right now. I don't want to be, because it's a different environment. And so I have transitioned to now be more of a policy practitioner where I work behind the scenes to create policies for students' lives. And that's where I am comfortable with now. But you need a different kind of student leader. And so you have to think to yourself, am I that new age leader that is required? And it's more than just, can I canvas? Can I use my call center and pull out votes? Which is what a lot of persons are doing now. It's more about, can I really handle the transitioning phase that we're in? We're at right now we're online and we're transitioning to face-to-face modality. I expect a guild president or whatever guild member right now to be talking about transitioning challenges that we're going to have. And as Mr. Ben talked about, not to be reactive but proactive, try to forecast these particular issues and try to put plans in place to mitigate these particular issues. And it has to be more than just regurgitation of what's always been there, but doing real research. I have seen where it has been lacked on the guild many years. We don't have leaders who actually put in time to do real research on innovative policies and programs to better their lives. I'm going to be honest with you, final sentence. Sometimes it takes the guild to be the one to push forward a mandate for students that will benefit all, in the sense that the administration won't see everything, and they can't because they're not on the ground. So you need a very proactive guild, a guild who is going to be informed, a guild who is going to research to ensure that they fill the gaps where admin lacks. That's my final comment. Thank you. And thank you so much, Taylor Hall, for having me. Goodbye.
Thank you. All right, and just the final question to wrap up. What advice would you give students who were vying for positions but they were not successful? Mr. Benson.
I would just say it's a learning experience. There are two outcomes. I've always said to myself, I have never lost a guild election, but if I did, I've always said to myself, I'm as comfortable with winning as I am with losing. Because there's a lesson to learn in each of them. If leadership is your passion, try again, but also stay involved and learn from that experience. Don't allow pride to be the deciding factor. Winning or losing is a lesson only if you are smart enough to learn from it, right? So I would say to those persons who didn't make it this time around, keep looking for the opportunities to serve. It may never be the guild at UWI, but it could also open other doors in leadership that you would not have anticipated. Stop being defeatist, become an opportunist. That's my word.
All right, Mr. Neil.
I mean, unlike Mr. Bent, I would have lost one election. But what that did for me was to serve as motivation for me to retry and to be reelected, and I was reelected, or was elected eventually. I'd say if that's where your passion lies, if that's what you're about, that's what you really want to do, then go back for it and don't stop trying until you get it. The other element of it though is that, as Roger rightly said, the guild may not be your calling, and there are some people who have run for guild, lost for guild, but have moved on to much greater things than the guild. And so if you have a passion for leadership or service, and that means that you're supposed to be serving on a committee, you may not necessarily be the leader of that committee at that point, that still helps to develop your leadership competencies. Because when I lost my first election, I served on the committee of the person that won and learned the portfolio. So I followed before I led, essentially. So if you didn't win, you don't have to be defeated. You can try again in the same capacity, you can try again in another capacity. What that just means is that you'd have to re-strategize, go back to the drawing board, and that helps you to make a determination as to who you are as an individual. And you can see the opportunities on the horizons and properly prepare for jumping at those opportunities as they come your way.
Definitely agree. Failure is not final. Just a reminder to those on YouTube that you can send questions in the chat to ask the panelists. I'm seeing a question here in the chat though that says, how does campaigning during a pandemic compare to face-to-face campaigns?
Campaigning in a pandemic is very different, but then again, society has evolved in such a way that we're more technologically driven. We have social media that has become the thing. So in a face-to-face environment, I mean, I remember when I was running, I walked every single door on campus. I knocked every door. I would walk for days and nights. As a matter of fact, when you're strategizing, you decide which halls you're going for on which nights. And you decide which halls you're going to which nights, and you walk, you talk to everybody, your throat dry, you walk with a bottle of water if you have it. And you engage people personally. Now people tend to share your flyer or share your poster, and that gives you a lot of mileage. In my time, Facebook was just coming on stream, and we had BBM just coming on stream. So we never have the Twitter and the Instagram that gives you the kind of mileage that these people have now. And so they have the benefit of that. So they don't need to have personal interactions as much anymore. So that's what makes it different. You're not personally engaged. You're not as personally engaged now as you were 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So in my mind, that is what makes it different. And when you get the nose, you get the nose to your face. You don't get them online where somebody can just ignore your poster or ignore your flyer. Somebody will tell you, no, don't talk to me. I'm not interested in voting for you. And that builds character, boy. Because people sometimes wait for a whole year to turn it down. And when you come to them door, no, I don't want to talk to you because you never talked to me before now. So for me, that's the difference.
All right. So Mr. Bent, as hall manager, how would you advise students to remain grounded? We are aware that emotional intelligence and ego can be a challenge.
Just stay true to the mandate you've set out. Don't allow popularity and fame and people whispering in your ears, or little more girls on your phone or boys on your live to change who you are. Authenticity is really the core of a leader. If you lose your authenticity, you automatically begin to lose the essence of who you are. So sometimes we're even losing who we are, we don't realize it. You know? Yeah. So we have to ensure that we keep ourselves true, because that is really what will keep us in the long run. It's hard sometimes when you're in the influence. One of the things I tried to be true to was when I was guild president, I didn't drive. I wasn't a part of a IT group. I was from St. Elizabeth and I didn't have no money per se. I never have no spending money. So I couldn't live certain lives. People would try to get me involved in that community. They would invite me to certain parties, you know. I would be invited to certain communities up in the hills.
All right, thank you. Is there any final words or thoughts from the panelists?
Sure that I'm true to myself. Here, Javon can tell you, as much as I lived at the union, and I've never been to integration. Why? Because everybody knew that when I ran, I was a Christian man, and I didn't go to integration, right? Carnival happened, and I never get out. I didn't go beach Juve, right? That was the nature of, I stayed true to the fact that people appreciated that I was a Christian, and I didn't need to be other than that. I was that until the day I left the guild, and I'm that even till today. You don't have to be who you don't want to be. Keep your convictions, and people will admire you for it.
All right, thank you for that. Any final words or advice from the panelists to those who are listening?
I would say the benefit to be derived from being involved in student leadership is not gained or seen whilst you're in leadership. It comes afterwards. So Christina alluded to it earlier. People are watching from the sidelines, sometimes cheering you on, sometimes just watching to see how you maneuver yourself whilst in the portfolio, and you don't know it. So don't think about immediate gratification, because a lot of the times the best form of gratification comes after you've done with the portfolio. So some of the times as student leaders, we think about the next position while we're in this position. So if I am a PRO or a CEAC or EAC, I'm thinking about president and vice presidency. And so rather than focusing on the portfolio that I'm in now, I start to focus on the portfolio that I want to be in. And that becomes a distraction because I start campaign before the campaign start. And you end up failing because you are so distracted with the next portfolio rather than the one you're in now. So just do the work. Do the work and let the work speak for you because it really does speak volumes. Much louder than you think you're hearing. The other thing is, Christina also said, my mantra is there's life after the guild or life after student leadership. So don't sully your reputation on the premise of a transient tenure. You will serve for 9 months, realistically speaking. Whether it be hall chair, faculty rep, guild president, you serve for 9 months. Because I don't necessarily count the summer months. Real service is 9 months. And so when you serve in the course of that 9 months, you must be practical about your leadership and have set objectives and be targeted in your approach, but don't burn bridges in that 9 months. They sue the authority that you think you have. So if you're in Taylor Hall, don't disrespect Mr. Hamilton and disrespect Frado because you're hall chair and deputy hall chair and say me are the man now. And them have to report to me because a time will come when you're no longer going to be hall chair or deputy hall chair or with a position at all. And guess what? Mr. Hamilton will still have him position and Frado will still have him position. And you are going to go out in the world of work and you want to work with I don't think so and so is such a good fit for your establishment because of the things that they did while in hall. So always be mindful of that. There is life after the guild. And the networks that you build today will bring you into tomorrow. I mean, my first trip into the Eastern Caribbean was because I was serving on the guild. That expanded my horizon significantly and allowed me to meet people who were on guilds in the Eastern Caribbean campuses. And my friendship with those people still lasts to today. So I'll use that to close. There's life after the guild, and the benefits to be derived from the guild come after serving or student leadership, generally speaking.
All right, Mr. Bent, before you share your final words, do you think venturing into student politics is necessary to enter into the political arena?
No, I don't, I absolutely do not. I don't see how they are related, really. They have somehow been related, but I don't think so. But if it is that you want to understand leadership, I guess you would serve at all different levels, including the university level, if you want to hone your skill as a leader. But I don't think it's a requisite, it's a prerequisite at all. Yeah, and as I close, I agree with everything that Mr. Neil said. And I also want to echo the sentiment. Your network is your net worth. Use it wisely.
All right, thank you very much to our panelists and to those on YouTube. Thank you for your nuggets, and I hope that everyone will take something from what has been said here today in terms of venturing into leadership arena. So that's it from Taylor Hall's Coffee Hour. See you next time.